Okay, okay. Well, we have Mr. James Scholfield here, my good friend. Let's have a conversation. And yeah, James is, of course, also very into all things non-duality, spirituality, things like that. And yeah, and most of all, I just like talking to you. So yeah, let's have a conversation. I think we didn't have anything planned, but we were just talking about something which I already liked a lot. And I think that was, we were talking a little bit about second guessing or decisions. I think that's a conversation that has been something we've talked about recently. Um, Maybe you want to share something about what you just shared about your experience with that.
Mm. Yeah, so mm, maybe it doesn't feel right to go straight into that. Maybe it feels right to go into where I was and where I am now.
Yeah, because where were you?
Exactly.
What
Well, I
do you want to
thought,
share?
yeah. So how it began was, so this has been I'd say a 5-year journey
Hmm.
that started with a Vipassana in Myanmar. And on that Vipassana, I had many mystical experiences and this first sense of emptiness or the self dropping away. I didn't think much of it. I also, on this Vipassana, saw for the first time how experiences I had in my teenage years affected um, the decisions that were being made in that moment, which was fascinating. How it's all connected, how we are conditioned to second guess or doubt or say no or stop, or to try and stop the flowing of the Tao or the way they talk about in Taoism. But most importantly, on like day 6 or 7 of the meditation retreat, I just felt this peace that I never felt before. And I said to myself, I want to feel that way for the rest of my life. So then the last 5 years has been this journey of turning inwards and exploring what was going on in this form, what was coming up in this experience that was fighting what was happening, that was resisting what was going on in this world. And bit by bit, by peeling back layer by layer through meditation, following the mind, following the sensations, inquiring into who am I, things started dropping away. But then things started appearing because the deeper you go, the more that comes to the surface. And over time, you I started to see things and experiences, and we met 4 years ago, and I was still at that beginning of like, I hadn't really registered the experience I had had on that Vipassana. But with the help of you and help of other people, and through self-inquiry and being with sensations, there are big shifts in the experience of like from 3D to two-dimensional, from this idea that there is no self. Um, and then I would say over the last 6 to 9 months, I experienced no self for the first time. And it seems to have stuck, which is really beautiful. And at the same time, it made me realize that everything is unfolding exactly how it's supposed to be, because how can it not? Like, there is no one to say that this is right or wrong. There's no one to resist what is happening in this very moment. There is just sensation, and there is conditioning, and then there is thought. But even thought is empty. But this takes time. So I've noticed over the last 6 months for sure, as things haven't gone my way or haven't gone my way, haven't gone the old James's way. It's about letting go of that. And the more I let go of this idea that things should be going differently, this feeling of peace and joy just started coming through. It started to reveal itself, which I now can feel, as spiritual teachers say, that like that is our state of being, of openness, of compassion, of love, of completeness. But there has to be this realization that we are not our thoughts, or things should be different to what they are. And when we realize that we are not our thoughts and things are exactly how they're supposed to be, then there is this dropping away of the ego, whatever we like to call it, rising up, this self rising up and saying like, okay, this isn't right, or no, I want this, or this makes me feel good, or this makes me feel safe. It's like, you are safe, you are complete, you are whole. There's nothing that needs to be gained. So it's been an absolute wild, messy, confusing, disorientating trip, especially the last 6 months when the self dropped away and things started to adjust. But now I've got to this point where I'm so deeply in touch with what is flowing that I know that that flow is, I just, not even that, so deeply in touch with what is flowing, the direction that is flowing in, there is absolutely no point on trying to hold on to or grasp anything, because that it can't even be held. There's nothing. It's like free falling. And the second I try and resist that free falling, that's when suffering comes in. And I realize that that is the reason why the self is created in the first place. It's because we know that we are not in control. There is no we. There's nothing to control what is unfolding in this world. So with that state I'm in at the moment, when it comes to building the well-being business, your well-being guide, and when it comes to communicating and getting to know certain people in a romantic sense, it's just if a river's flowing in that direction, it is flowing in that direction. The mind might come in, and that's okay, because that, like you said, that's part of the oneness of it all. But that mind dropping in and saying no or resisting that does massively drop away. And there's just this sense of like flow of serenity, even when things don't go well. Even my granddad passed away 4 days ago, and my mum's very upset. My dad's very, and they've got a lot to organize, and all of these things in this world that happen. But it's just a flow. It's the way. It is, like we say in Taoism, the way. So the Tao, way the Tao. So yeah, it's been fascinating to adjust to that, to realize how it's always been. It feels so natural, like everything's changed. And the anxiety still arise around, let's say, money. That's a big one. That keeps coming up, but that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. That's getting weaker and weaker. And it's not having that thought, oh no, I am going to make money, or I am going to be a success. It's like, be a success, not a success. It's okay. This is the way it will unfold. Just get out of the way. So yeah, so that was a bit of an update of how I got to where I am now.
Hey, you talked about 2D versus 3D shift.
Yeah.
And I don't really. I think I understand. I think I don't understand what you're saying there. So maybe you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So from a visual perspective, so we have the senses, and from a visual perspective, there are a number of times where I notice a shift of world out there, going from a three-dimensional, very three-dimensional, to more of a flatter view. Because as we know, there is no, like, space and time is an illusion. And that was certainly something I experienced, and experience it now. Like if I look now, I can see like it looks very flat. There is no distance. There is no movement. In comparison to where it was before, it'd be like very three-dimensional.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have all these, you could say, perception layers that become available with deep realization that you can play or focus in and out of, right? But I definitely recognize that when we're not constructing the world mentally, it's not there.
Yeah, exactly. And these are things like I notice the emptiness, and then I notice the fullness at the same time. But I've really let go of that, and I think that's been really helpful, like letting go of these different unique experiences. They just don't seem very important anymore. Which I think has helped me on my journey. I think a lot of people do get caught up in that spiritual ego. I think what got in the way was that actually I was looking for peace. It was like I wasn't looking at like I want to be enlightened. I was like looking for peace. And then I realized that I needed to let go of the idea that I'll always feel good or always be peaceful. Right. So that was a that was a big shift here. Yeah, especially when it came to health, the body, the peace of others. It's like, no. Sometimes my body will feel like shit. Sometimes people I love will be upset. So yeah, sometimes there won't be peace. So even amongst that stillness that I now sense, which is just here, is always here now. There's still chaos within that stillness from time to time.
Yeah, the chaos and the stillness. I think they're hard to pull apart right now, right? In the state that you're in, it's like, what is stillness? What is chaos? When you're walking through the city, it's like
Exactly.
that's just because everything is a mental label like that, right?
Exactly. And it loses its. Well, I was in Bangkok last week, and in some ways, everything is very intimate, but there's such emptiness in the intimacy, so that it can feel like there's all of these colors, all of these sounds, but like that's still empty, that's still intimate, and that's still stillness. So yeah, it's like looking at a piece of art, which is that it can't move, it can't, nothing can happen to it. It was like watching a film actually on a screen. Like you can, it feels like you're in the film, but you're not going to be affected by the film, unless it's fucking scary. But most films, you're not really affected by. But it's like that. That's how I perceive reality 98% of the time now. The real challenges are at like the core wounds of like with your family and probably relationships as well, but certainly with your family. But even there, it's like I'm living at home with my parents now, and it's like reactions it's just not coming. It's just not happening. It's not happening. So yeah, this journey truly is the end of suffering, and I'm forever grateful for it. So.
Yeah, beautiful. And you just talked about no self. So you said you were in no self for 6 to 9 months. I'm curious, maybe can you sort of define that? What do you mean, or how do you experience no self?
So I would say it is a very difficult way. It's an impossible thing to explain. But there is a body, an image of a body, and there's a body moving with the brain and the heart and the lungs, and there is a voice and talking. But there is no I, or there is no James, or there is no identity within this. So yeah, that's how I'd describe it. Just there is something here talking, part of this world. There is a world, or some people like to call it a dream. And within this reality, there isn't an identity. There isn't something you could call a James like in here, in the body. That's the best way I could describe it. Yet still I'm here, yet still I'm experiencing, yet still, but that isn't who I am. What I am is, it just can't be described. That's my sense. That's how I feel. I can't describe what I am.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, so it's I want to add to that because I think a lot of non-dual teachers, etc., talk like this, right? Because it's, for some, it's like a theoretical insight. It's like an intellectual insight, which is correct because when you actually look at science, at quantum mechanics and things like that, there is nothing solid, right? There is no, so the self then is just a label. I think experientially there are different no self states, you could say, which you can experience in a different way. And what you're saying, like the no self state, to me would be like that you actually have gone beyond both the personal self, so you don't really feel like a personal self anymore, but you also don't really feel like you're everything, like your consciousness or you're the world or something like that. So this is, you could say, an energetic, emotional, almost like belief-based entity, is like kind of like a center of experience through which you experience, kind of like a personal filter, which then can drop, right? So that's, I think, also what we've been talking about before, because when there's no longer a filter through which everything goes, there is less of an idea of control, or I should do something with this to manage the image of me, or to manage how this is happening, or something like that, which is an illusion unto itself, of course, that there is some sort of control there. But at least that energetic belief is kind of like a bottleneck in the freely expressing this, or at least that is felt that way. Whether that's actually true or not, probably it's not actually true, but it's felt. So your perception changes of your day-to-day activities, etc., in the world, or as this character moving through seemingly time space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is this very subtle empty movement that I talked about, and which I'm very in tune with. This flow of life, this life force, and it certainly feels that there's more of a choice now. It certainly feels that I could just lie down on my bed forever. There's no fear. There's literally there's no fear of death because nothing can die. That is felt. That's experienced. There's like no experience here of like something can die, which is really fascinating. I'm still at that point, and it will take time, where certain mechanisms are limiting beliefs are still being let go of. So, for instance, if the business fails, there's still there's a fear there in the gut of, oh, what does that mean? What are you going to do? How are you going to earn money? But I now know that it doesn't matter. It will unfold how it's supposed to unfold. So there's still this like legacy conditioning, which is here, which I just notice, and it's fine. And I think there's just now it's just reacting moment by moment to what has always been just moment by moment, which is deeply peaceful. Yeah,
What
there's
is the
just
business right now? Like what?
so
Because I heard you're building a business, right?
yeah. So it's called Your Wellbeing Guide, and there's 3 revenue streams. One is me offering one-on-one well-being coaching and counseling to people. That could be people who are on this path to awakening, or just people who want to live a more peaceful life, using I say embodied exploration techniques like somatic body orientated coaching and Hakomi. That's the first one. And then the second one is I'm creating this 12-week well-being program, which talks about somatics, body-orientated coaching, self-inquiry and things. And so we're going to be offering that. And the third one, which I'm really looking forward to doing and spending a lot of time on, is getting into businesses and organizations and schools and talking to them about well-being, be it mindfulness, be it inquiry, be it movement, be it using the breath, really taking people, really meeting people where they are. So if I think about my journey over the last 5 years, it started with mindfulness and now it's gone to, surrender, let's say, but using different techniques. So I use mindfulness, I use breath work, I use self-inquiry, I use TRE, which I know you've talked about quite a bit. So taking all of those different techniques and just meeting people exactly where they are. And I'd love to get into businesses to do that. So that's the 3 main focuses. And yeah, just seeing where it unfolds. Yeah, it feels
Sounds really cool, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, lovely. And yeah, it's beautiful to help people where they are, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like if I started talking to some people about all there is emptiness, you don't exist, you don't need to do anything, like all that doesn't really resonate with me anyways. But so it's all about just meeting the moment or the person or the organization exactly where they are. And I'm confident
So
that's
that's
something I can
also, I think so. Sometimes pointing to, let's say, deeper reality for people that they might experience later on can, I think, dilute some of the sense of what am I experiencing now, right? So some of these teachings that point to, let's say, the end, right? There is no one, there is no identity, etc. That's great for people that are actually experiencing that, I think, or close to experiencing that. But I think it's way more relevant to deal with what is your experience now, and can I actually be curious and find this current experience and investigate that. Yeah, for me, it's like one of the main things on this path, which is, I think, relevant for everybody, wherever you're at. So yeah, just want to throw that in there because you said already that you're not really liking that teaching for normal people out there, but
well, it doesn't work. And I see that
yeah,
I think it's really important that all my teachings, and they always will be underpinned by the idea that everything is whole and everything is unfolding. But to say that to someone who's going through a huge amount of suffering or trauma, that won't go down very well. So it's everything is unfolding. The peace inside of you is always available, but I appreciate at the moment you're not feeling that way, and let's work together to just unveil a little bit more of that peace. I think that's the positioning that will work. And it's been in the spiritual world, and it's very easy to have these awakenings and just stay in that state up there, especially in the yeah, exactly. But then there's a lot of reaction because the body is being avoided, and the fact that actually the work that has to be done to get to this point of at the end of suffering, you need to go through absolutely everything. Like nothing can be avoided. Everything that's left undone has to be seen, which I mean we've done it together, but that's wild. In fact,
yeah, wow. Yeah, and it might not be for everyone as well to look at that this deeply. Potentially everybody, of course, but that you should be fascinated with all looking at these things to be able to keep that up also. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious because you have been coaching people for a while before you started this business already. I'm curious what some of the insights, because we're both coaching people, so curious what your insights have been like working with people for the past years. I think a couple of years, right? 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, 2 to 3. So
Something like that.
I'd say that every person who comes our way for a reason. Like, life is a relationship, so we get out of it something or another. I think I think it's really important for those offering support to be in a regulated space, to be regulated. I think co-regulation. I think presence is more important than intervention when it comes to support, coaching, therapy, whatever you'd like to call it. And yeah, your presence is sometimes enough, just holding that space, and sometimes not saying a word can be deeply, deeply healing for a lot of people. And I don't think it's about fixing people at all, because at an ultimate level, like, there is nothing wrong. I think it's about using your intuition to using your intuition and understanding how everything is organic, and that humans are self-regulating. So you will see something inside of somebody which they might be missing, and it's about asking them a question to, like, help them get to that point. Yeah, that's been a big one. So, like, support, like guiding in an unattached way people to where what they might be feeling but might not be able to understand it yet. It's just, you're just like the banks of a river, and they're the running water, and you're just like guiding them along. And that's a really important thing. It's not about fixing. And yeah, it's really important. But your presence is more important than intervention. That's a really vital way of thinking.
So meaning you being there, holding the space for somebody, is more important to you than actually doing something to help them take the next step, or using a technique, or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How we are regulated here, our presence, but that is on many occasions enough. And a lot of the people have a huge bank of resources to tap into. They haven't been able to stop, feel, and be able to take that next step, and we're there to facilitate that. And if we are involved in guiding them along, it's a lot of through questioning, like experiments, validation, as opposed to, you need to be doing this differently, or you need to be doing this. Like, no, that doesn't help. That does not, we don't relate like that, especially in that setting. From my perspective, it's very rare for that to happen.
that's more of a training session than a coaching session as well, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's like, maybe if I'm sitting in front of businesses, I'd be talking like, right, this is what mindfulness is. This is a technique that you could do. But I think actually a technique that you could do, not, I think everyone's path is different. It really is. And it's really important that the client is able to tap into a number of resources, and really the most vital thing is they are attuned as much as possible to what's right for them, for their intuition, let's say, for that little whisper, that gut instinct. So really getting them to connect to their bodies. Yeah, it's very, I guess that is a really important part of it.
Yeah. So in this path of letting go of suffering, you've been traveling a lot, right, in the
Yeah.
past years. And I wanted to ask you just some countries I've I've got imagery from is like Mexico, right?
Yeah.
India, of course the UK, where you're at right now. Yeah, Thailand a little bit. So Myanmar, you just shared your journey there. So I'm curious how traveling, what influence or impact that has had on you and your journey, and yeah, how does that look for people on the spiritual path to be traveling?
I think in
What does that do?
the way that this world is designed, especially in the materialistic world, where it seems that it's more important for us to gather and gain and achieve, it's important to have a break, and it's important to have space, and it's important to hear different perspectives. And that's what traveling offers. If I think about the places I went, it's the people or it's the culture. So for instance, in Asia, which is deeply underpinned by all of these teachings, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, you can sense that in the way people interact, and you go into the temples. And I think for me, it's just finding these places of solitude, these places of peace. For me, to just sit where, I mean, I stopped drinking 5 years ago, alcohol, and that was due to just getting away from London, getting away from the cities. I think we need to have a pilgrimage somewhere for us to just get the space to turn inwards, to stop. So that's what these places brought. They brought new teachings. So when I was in Mexico, I was in Hridaya Yoga, and their teachings are underpinned by Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry and Sacred Heart, which is really special, just to be surrounded by those like-minded people. They call it a sangha, don't they? So yeah, the community is really important, I say. So that's what the traveling offered. They traveled us some space, culture, new ways of thinking. Been highly beneficial. I realized recently that, but there's always an endpoint that you realize that you don't need that anymore, like that, because it's like the hero's journey. And like I've ended up going home. Like you end up going back to where you've come from, but everything's changed. So there, you need to I was thinking about this earlier. You need to take from these things what you need to take without it becoming another way to escape. And then, but so that's why it's important to like stay in here and being really authentic with yourself. And
Have you read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho?
Yeah, well, a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like you're describing. Like it's the journey, basically. Spoiler alert, but he comes home at the end, and he finds that the treasure has always been there, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's,
absolutely. Yeah.
I think wherever you go, there you are, right? It's the John Kabat-Zinn quote.
Yeah, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
But lovely to hear. And how was for you, like living in an ashram? How was, because you've done that for how long? Like a couple of weeks, right?
I think living in an ashram has its, I think, a pros and its cons. I feel that you have the space to focus on yourself and your journey. The problem I find is that you can get caught up in rites and rituals and spirituality, and that becomes another way to escape and avoid what you need to look at. So I think what I'm really proud of is that on this journey, I haven't avoided anything. If suppose, as you know, sometimes I've gone too far into the stickiness, the messiness. So yeah, I think it's really important to go into that in your right pace and take a step away and have a break when needs be. But yeah, I think ashrams are cool and give you some space and beautiful teachings and very heart-led and good discipline. But at the end of the day, you can do this anywhere, and you don't want things to become a way to avoid.
Yeah, it's very. I think what you said for me activates a couple of things. I think the first one is just in general the quiet time or silence or space is very underrated in the process, right? And like everybody that I've seen go through something like this with genuine progress has had quite some space in their life to make that happen. So sometimes the space is sort of forced. So life forces you to make that space. But that's definitely one ingredient, I would say, which gives you the space to actually build mindfulness. And then when you have that mindfulness, you start, looking inwards and start seeing all this, you could say, programming, conditioning, whatever. And then you need that space to be able to deconstruct that, right? Which is then leads you to deconstruct the self as well, which is also, conditioning, you could say. So yeah, that's very, very, very relevant. And I think the second thing I definitely don't remember. So, but it was really good.
Yeah, of course,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. No, I agree. And also, you need
interesting.
that time to integrate the shifts. It can be very disorientating, this process, and it has been for me. It's like, whoa, like everything's dropping away. I'm reaching out for things when there's no self, and it does settle. And when the self does drop away, there's still this. You realize that before the self was created, there was this reaching out, this grasping, and actually, that's what the self is. It's just this like rising up against life. Yeah, that's all it is. So, and you, when there's no self, you can't avoid anything. It's all here. It's all so here, so intense, like the anxiety, the energies, but they do settle down. They really do settle down, which I'm bloody relieved, because at some point I thought it would never end.
It can be quite psychedelic is how I felt it at points, as in not with like visuals or crazy stuff, but that can feel very disorienting. That was actually my second point, that I was watching Angelo Dilulu's video today, which I'm a big fan of, thanks to you, by the way. You recommended him a couple of years ago, and he said something like, it was like a retreat video, and he said like, you're now maybe at day 2 or 4 or 5, something like that, and maybe you're starting to feel something like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know. You just feels this energetic disorientation, and actually that's good because it's working on you. And actually, he said, yeah, it's very rare to feel that at home. And I thought, well, it's something I felt so often. But then he said, unless you have a very aggressive meditation practice. And I thought, okay, that might be the reason.
Yeah.
Because, I think definitely I've been, on, I think 2 or 3 retreats. And people ask me about retreats quite often. But for me, I've heard that play a big part in other people's journey. But for me, I think I wanted to do this alone for a long time. And there was some sort of ego that wanted to do it alone as well. And also, just when I was on retreat, a sort of still a fear barrier to really go in, because it was, for me earlier in the journey. So, and afterwards I got a family, I got kids, etc. So it doesn't really make sense anymore to do it. But what I did a lot is just have you could say, a very aggressive meditation practice at home. And I feel that's definitely, if you want to meditate, that's definitely, you don't need a retreat again.
No.
Some guidance or some peers are nice in this process, right? To talk through, but you don't need anything.
I think
You just need the balls to do it, right?
this is it. Yeah, I think what you and I have, which we should be really proud of, is that discipline, and is that resilience, and is that just like, what does it, I can't remember what Nishigata Maharaj calls it, but it's like that perseverance. I think perseverance is really important in this. And when people are at home, they can easily get distracted. But that discipline's really good, and that's why retreat environments are useful. I noticed for me as well, like it's been moved very, very quickly, and there's certain fears which probably could have only been met if I was to leave home, for instance, for a second. Like I was deep in this, and I went to India, and I went to Ramana Maharshi's ashram, and I got back and I was on my bed, and I was speaking to you, and I was like, I felt there's something inside me that was so scared of being alone, so scared of being away from their parents, so scared from being overwhelmed. This was like 2-3 months ago, and I just had to like die into that fear. I think that was it felt like the first real sense of separation. But yeah, I had to die into it, and I felt like I was dying, and I felt the mind was just like so scared. But I don't think that would have, well, who knows, but that wouldn't have been experienced and seen through so quickly if I had just stayed at home, or if I had if I'd been in a relationship. But who knows? Like, who knows? But that's what I intuit why it happened so quickly. I was able to see through that first like, feeling of separation, because I went from being at home, my parents like deep in India, hadn't slept 36 hours, went to Ramana Maharshi's ashram, which is the most profound energy underneath Arunachala mountain, which is like, whoa. And then I was like, yeah, the mind was like, what is going on? Utter disorientation and destruction. It felt like destruction. So yeah, although at the time it feels like you're going into the depths of hell. Like I read this quote saying, someone saying that when you're in the darkness, that means that's the closest time you are to the light. When you're in the darkness, it's how close you are to the light, and ultimately on reflection, like that's what happened. I was so close to that light.
Yeah, it's every time I've been really, really, really suffering, then I know like I'm close to a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because it just, yeah, that's just how it goes, right? It's just you cycle in and out of this stuff while on the process. So this too will pass. So when you feel this, this crazy emotion or something like that, it in a couple of hours, or maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days, maybe max, usually, it's just, it goes. So yeah, we think sometimes that we're doing it, right? We're working, we're scanning, we're meditating on, but actually it's doing us, right?
Yeah.
So we can just, that's another thing I heard in the video from Angelo. He said, like the 2 rules of surgery, like sit still and you're not the surgeon.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So it's about energetic processes, right? So
Yeah.
sit still and you're not the surgeon. So that's, while at these things, it's
Yeah,
just,
and talking about energy as well, I found that TRE, so trauma release exercises, and yoga and qigong have been really helpful at the deeper stages of realization. And walking, it's a very energetic process, and it's important to have those tools. And also, I'd say that if there's a lot of trauma trapped inside the body, which there was for me, it's really important to seek professional help from trauma therapists. Like this spiritual awakening journey, it opens up everything inside of you, and I think there is a place to speak to someone, a real professional, when it comes to trauma and those deeper wounds that are held in the body, which ultimately do come up very quickly and aggressively when the self starts to really drop away. What I noticed, and I had brilliant craniosacral therapy from a lady called Iris, who was able to provide that safe space for that to be processed. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents on other support structures to put in place when you're on this journey.
yeah. Yeah, I think trauma is, we often don't know what traumas there are until we actually start doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And then we can think we just need more of the same, but oftentimes we need to first take some of the edge off, let's say, with like different techniques or different guidance, that's more trauma related. And I also see that with clients, that's that like you said, with trauma you need specific help.
Yeah.
um, so thanks for that. That's, yeah. And how has it been for you to be single on this journey, right? Because that's something that has happened. Let's say you're a very attractive man, of course, but
Thank you.
That yeah, but that has happened, and it's very interesting for me to, because we're we've been going through this path together. We're friends, but we've been living very different lives.
Yeah.
And I've been mostly in one place with like 2 kids and a wife, and you've been moving all over as a single man. And really curious, how that, do you think, has affected your journey?
Yeah.
Not that we have any control. Maybe life. We talk sometimes that you were more of the guy that wanted to have a family, or maybe stay somewhere safe, and I was maybe more, my conditioning was to move all over the world and to be single. So it was really interesting that life put you in this process, especially in the situations which you might not prefer, to be able to see that's also okay, and to actually let go of some of the both maybe desire as attachment.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, funny you should say that. I believe consciousness wants us all to wake up and realize that we are liberated beings. And the further we go down the path, the further that consciousness lets us do and see things which our mind doesn't want us to do. So it's because that is the only way to dissolve that sense of separation, to go through that darkness. And to go through that darkness, we usually have to do things we don't want to do. So for me, I've noticed romantically, desire has dropped away, and I used to have a huge energy, sexual desire, the need to be with somebody. I did have an experience when I was younger, in my teens, around like sexual abuse, which impacted that as well. So there was a lot of confused, trapped sexual energy which needed to dissolve or resolve. And I feel that over time, the people that came into my life, which were all really special people, just for certain circumstances, we couldn't work out in the long term. But in those short term situations, something was healed, something was let go of, something was triggered inside both of us, but certainly for me. And I'm reflection, like no one I have met up to this point and been in a romantic relationship with, on reflection, that it would never have been something longer. But I know I took, and they took, well, I personally took so much healing out of that time we spent together. So yeah, karmically, I think there was something about relationships and sexuality that this form had to go through to liberate from suffering. Yeah,
What would you say that, what impact did sexual abuse have on sexual desire for you? Like, did you? Yeah, I'm curious about that. Without you
it's an
revealing any.
interesting one. Yeah, I think it increased. I think there's a lot of trapped. What that one day where all the energy was released, there was no, sorry, the one day that I relived that traumatic experience and like what happened after that. I think it was what happened after that. So because of the experience I had, I suffered so much from like panic attacks and feeling of being trapped and fear of men and people like that. And there was so much trapped energy actually in my root chakra, and which I think that energy circulated around the body, and I thought that that needed to be released through sexual activity, right? So it's like this trapped energy made me feel that I this need to be more sexual and have more partners and lovers. So when this trauma was released, this experience and the energetic release, I just felt it just coming off of my body. And I felt it through all my genitalia, through my what's that chakra down there, the solar plexus one? I don't know.
Like the second one,
The
you
second one,
mean
yeah.
below the navel?
Yeah, below the navel. Yeah, that one. So much energy was being released. So much energy. And then over time, like the need for desire to release that sexual energy through partners or through masturbation, like really dropped away. So yeah, that was the big shift. I think that trauma and that trapped energy in the body and that fear made the brain think, oh, that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be, what's the way to release it? And it wasn't through sexual, it wasn't through sexual experiences. It would be through healing. And in this situation, it was craniosacral therapy, and yeah, and also being triggered by a partner. Yeah, so she triggered this. Bless her, she's a really special person, but she triggered this fear, and then it just like came rushing to the surface. And
That's definitely a blessing, right? She gave
oh,
you a beautiful blessing, right?
yeah, absolutely, like life changing. Yeah, 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 yeah,
But it's so interesting because, okay, so I think this for me, uh, what arises in with me is that a lot of people, when, for example, you had this trauma which created actually the sexual need to somehow relieve this energy, right?
yeah,
And then the normal things that genitalia want to do is just have sex, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of like the path of least resistance. But what a lot of people do is that they then want to sort of, oh, I'm over sexually, so I should repress, right? So it's kind of like you have this first distortion, which actually
yeah,
wants to sort of release and heal itself, and also wants to be seen. Because through noticing, I have, by just naturally expressing yourself, you notice I have a lot of sexual energy there, maybe a little bit, maybe it's a little bit much, or sometimes it feels like a little bit out of balance. And through that, you can actually notice I have this trauma, right? But if you see your natural self, and then often sometimes as well as at a young age, we can then distort and sort of suppress, right? And think, oh, we shouldn't do that, and then be hard on ourselves. So that creates like the second distortion almost. So I think I'm starting to talk a little bit more about that, but I think authentically expressing yourself in this process makes you actually see how you really are, and then be able to work with certain, energies or trauma or things that are actually that you notice your natural tendencies.
yeah,
But when we live from the mind and we're suppressing a lot of things, we actually don't notice our natural tendencies. So we think that we're not so much suffering actually, while we're deeply suffering. Um, yeah, this distortion upon distortion is something I see,
yeah, yeah. No, I
and I've seen it
absolutely
myself,
agree.
of course, as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And what was the phrase you used? When you're authentic.
Yeah, just expressing your
Yeah,
authentic self
exactly.
or ego or whatever.
And that could be, yeah, that's a big thing for me. Yeah, oh my God, like it's so important to express what wants to be expressed.
Yes.
And you can do that in healthy ways, but there are actually, unless abusive and aggressive, it's very difficult to do this unhealthily. But even like shouting or journaling or shaking, it's so important just to be able to express, because because sometimes sitting on the mat, you become very repressed. But actually, by
Yes.
moving and by shouting and by journaling, remember Adyashanti talked about when he had his first awakenings, that every time he was conditioned to felt this sense of separation, he'd get his notepad, go into a cafe and write. And that's what I did. I just wrote. And even if it was swearing or massive words, it was just like it had to be released energetically. It's like this seeking energy needs to be seeked. You need to go through that seeking that needs to be released. On Bumble, just going or whatever people do. It's just like that needs to come out of the system for it to be let go. And I think there shouldn't be any shame in people expressing their authentic feelings, especially anger as well. Like anger is a massive one amongst men and women as well. Actually, there's so much shame around anger, but my God, no, you have reason to be angry, right? You have reason to shout, to scream, to throw punches, whatever. It's like just you have to let that come out. Otherwise, there's a blockage there. Yeah, really true. So yeah, what you said about expressing your authentic self is so important on this journey. So important. It's not all love and light and peace and hugs and sitting there and meditating and being like that. No, it's fucking rage as well.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like going for everything that wants to be, expressed exactly. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, I just think that if you somehow lose sight of that honoring what want to be felt or want to be seen, want to be acted out, to be amazed by what naturally wants to happen, and discovering new things about yourself as well through that. I think it's crucial. And like you said, it's not all just sitting and la la la. And I think that there's a lot of delusion about that.
Yeah,
About trying to lose our humanity, you could say.
yeah,
Or painting everything in positive thoughts, or in white dresses. Or I think we talked about that in the past, that a lot of when I talk to people and say something, I use the word spirituality or something like that on a birthday or something like that, then they think that I mean something totally different than what I mean. Usually they think I mean either angels or white dresses or rituals and ceremony, but they don't really think like meeting your deepest fears in a room by yourself, right?
exactly.
um,
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is like it's
and
not.
there's a time and a place for white dresses and angels, but
Yeah,
you know,
at a wedding, but
for example.
yeah, no, it's not. It's like it's a boot camp. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the end of your world. It's total destruction. Um, and then coming out of there, it's this everything that stays the same, but the internal world is one of stillness and peace, and all we've been looking for through these relationships and these movies and sex and alcohol, and yeah, it's all we've ever wanted, and work, and it's available to anyone. So
It's kind of like when it's just the peace that we've been looking for, or the stability or the relaxation we've been looking for externally through doing all these things, can only be found by actually dissolving what's the source of this suffering, you could say, or unrest or something like that. So it's fine if we through that express ourselves, and first maybe as in puberty and afterwards do all these things, so we know that it's not that right, that you can't drink away your pain, or you can't smoke away your sorrows, or you can't sex your way out of trauma. It's like it's good to know that, because it would be a lot easier if we could.
yeah, absolutely.
um,
And I
but
think
then
we
it
we have
becomes
to.
sad if we continue that, right? If we continue that stimulus.
Yeah, for some people, you will always throughout their lives, it will just be a place of avoidance and distraction. I feel that I think it's very rare to find someone who goes on this journey to end their suffering who hasn't suffered, who hasn't, and then who hasn't turned to all these things and then realized that actually none of these things will work. And before I went on Vipassana, and I remember I was working in London, had a very successful career, had a lot of money, had a partner, and I turned to my boss and I was like, what's the point? Like, I am utterly miserable. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. Like, I saw no way out of this, of the delusion, of the pain and suffering. And that's when I went to India and then Myanmar, and I had these experiences. But I had to hit rock bottom to be like, I'm turning away from this world, and I'll come back. I'll be back in one way or another. But I'm turning away to go on this journey of healing, of realizing, of remembering like who I was when I was born and what I'm supposed to be, and remembering and seeing what's already in here, like what is already available beneath the clutter and the thoughts and the stuff.
Yeah, everything is already available. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing I really think about as well. Like, I have this feeling like anything, I could do anything now. I could try and do anything, and I could try and, for me, I would never want to be an astronaut. It doesn't make sense. Or yeah, it's really interesting. You have unlimited, everything's unlimited now, but you just have more clarity about what's more practical or what just feels nice. It's you can make better, more grounded decisions.
I think my favorite topic maybe is that everybody has a role to play in this, right? And that
Yeah,
we can just, when we forget about ourselves or forget about the mind or what we want, that we automatically, naturally just play our part. And that's the part we're meant to play, and nothing else. So
yeah.
yeah, that's
And
freedom. To me, that's freedom.
freedom and compassion. Because you haven't got anyone to protect anymore. There isn't an I to protect. There's just like this overflowing of, actually not overflowing. That sounds like it's a lot, but like there's this just feeling of just compassion and equanimity and equality. You treat everyone with love and respect. And it just feels very natural to do that as well. So yeah, that's a big shift.
Yeah, and you can still have sex and drink or something like that,
Of course.
but it's not that there's something that you delude yourself that there's something to find there. It's just
Yeah,
another experience, which is totally fine,
exactly.
if that happens for you, for like for other people it doesn't feel, yeah, that character doesn't want to express that way, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, you enjoy certain foods, you still have preferences around conversations, TV shows, football clubs, but it doesn't matter if a football team loses, or it doesn't matter if you don't get
Yeah,
that sushi. It's just like, oh, I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy that, but it's like, well, it's everything's good. Like, it's,
yeah. Anyway, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, that's I like that so much, just that everything is a sort of sensation in this, where we don't need to push and pull or on it, or we don't need to mentally label it, or we can let go of our preferences, right? I think something that came up like 20 minutes ago was the John de Ruiter actually has like a very nice saying where he says like to let go at all personal costs, or to surrender at all personal costs, because it's definitely a personal cost, right? Because your person will not feel like this is the thing that it wants, right? Because spirituality might be another way for you to try to get what you want,
exactly.
to just feel good all the time or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had
But
to make
that's not how it works.
No, I had to let go of meditation for sure. I had to let go of traveling. I had to let go of the deeper you go though, the second you let go of them, you're like, it's just, yeah, it's fine, it's gone now, it doesn't matter. But you have to let go of that because there's still this like very subtle ego reaching out. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be this meditator, I'm supposed to be this, supposed to be that. And I'm sure there's still stuff here, but it's like it's dropping away more and more and more and more. And also it's fine. It's like it's part of humanness to have identity in one way or another. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years for this character for me. Uh,
Let's
but
keep in touch.
we will
All
keep in
right.
touch. Yeah,
Yeah.
but at the end, but also it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
No.
Like, um, yeah, and with that lack of ego, there just comes a lot of compassion and kindness and care for others. So.
Thank
good.
you for that, James.
My pleasure.
Much love, and see you soon, maybe in another video. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to.
Bye bye.
Bye.